Welcome to Listening to UCR, a podcast production by the Faculty Welfare Committee of the Department of Statistics at the University of California in Riverside. My name is Daniel Jeske, and my co-host is Ezra Curran. Our guest on this podcast is Patricia Morton, a faculty member and the chair of the Riverside Faculty Association at UCR.
Would you like to start with introducing your background and tell us a little bit about how you started at UCR?
I have a kind of dual background. I was trained as an architect originally and practiced as an architect for some time in New York City. I went to Columbia to get my Master of Architecture. Then I realized I had a passion for teaching and research, and so I got a PhD in architectural history at Princeton, and then I came here.
Is there a certain type of architecture that you especially enjoy?
Well, I study 20th century architecture, mainly modern art. I wrote my first book on the colonial exposition in Paris in 1931. And now I'm working on architecture in the U.S. in the 60s and 70s.
Palm Springs has a lot of mid-century modern designs.
Yes. Palm Springs has an incredibly rich architectural history.
We learned about your involvement with the Riverside Faculty Association, RFA. So could you tell us a little bit about what that association is?
It actually goes back to 1975. It was founded as a kind of balance to the Academic Senate over very particular concerns right then about a certain breakdown of shared governance, for example, and also perception that the Academic Senate was not fully supporting and protecting faculty welfare concerns. So it's a venerable institution. The RFA is campus specific, but we are in coalition with other campuses around the system in what's called the Council of UC Faculty Associations, CUCFA. And with CUCFA, then, we have a much more powerful group. It magnifies our voices. And then we are also able to actually do lobbying activity. We speak for faculty in ways that perhaps the Academic Senate can't.
Was the Faculty Welfare Committee not strong and robust in the 70s when RFA was formed? Or?
I have that impression. Of course, that was long before my era. But yes, I have the impression from having spoken with members who were active at that time that there was in general, the Academic Senate was just rather a weak institution. The shared governance structures were not really very robust. So there was a perception that in fact, I would say that there was a perception that perhaps the faculty should unionize and that this might be one step towards that. So in the 70s, there was a vote taken at the different campuses on really a sort of preliminary step as to whether the faculty should form a union. And only Santa Cruz voted yes. And all the other campuses, so at that time there were 9 campuses, now there are 10, the others voted not to unionize but to form these associations as a type of independent, dues-supported volunteer faculty association.
So all 10 campuses have their own faculty association?
Merced does not, although we have a kind of correspondent at Merced, but unfortunately they haven't yet organized a faculty association, but I think that's just a matter of time. But the rest of the campuses do.
I suppose RFA has regularly scheduled meetings like the Senate. And I'm just wondering how... Okay, so maybe you could tell us a little bit about that schedule, and then how does your agenda get filled out with topics to discuss?
Right. So the RFA at this point is more of a kind of loose structured institution or association. So we mainly do keep in touch by email, primarily. We haven't had regularly scheduled meetings except as desired, and that's because we're quite issue-driven. We really are more of a nimble institution that tends to respond to issues and tends to respond to the need for action. One of the things I would say is that we are different from the Academic Senate. There's a distinction that we always have to reiterate. We're not the Senate. We are an independent body, but we work closely with the Senate. Right now, I would say that UCR's Academic Senate has, in my experience, hardly ever been more active and more engaged. So there's less urgency, I would say, about certain issues, although I can talk about some of the things that we believe are really important right now that we're working on.
That would be interesting to
hear.
Yeah, sure. But just to say, we try to have at least one general meeting a year. And then other meetings kind of as issues arise.
And how many people are we talking about, let's say, from the UCR campus?
It's somewhere between 50 and 100 people.
I think you're the president or the chair?
Chair.
You're the chair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Different campuses have different designations, but we say, chair.
Do you have an audience with, say, the chancellor and the provost whenever you want, or?
We have had very, very good responses from both of them.
That's
yes.
great.
And we've met with every administration. We always make a point of introducing ourselves and introducing the issues that we believe are most important. So, yes.
So shared governance includes consultation with RFA.
Well, technically not. I mean, technically we are this independent body, but because we have had standing now for more than 40 years, there's a sort of understanding that yes. But I would say also that that's part of the responsibility of upper administration is to respond to requests, and
Right.
they always have.
So what are some of the issues that you're dealing with?
To give you a little bit more history, RFA dates to 1975, but it really kind of went into a quiescent state, shall we say, in the 90s. I think partly because the Academic Senate really did revive, and there was perceived to be less need for the Faculty Association.
Was there a precipitating event that led to the revival of the Senate during those years?
Yes, indeed.
What was that?
And that was the recession and the massive budget cuts that
Okay.
came out, the tuition increases. So at that point, I was involved with a group of people who felt that it was important to bring back the RFA, in part because we do have this capacity that the Senate does not, which is we can directly advocate to the legislature. By law, the Senate cannot do that. So we can advocate, as the
Either
case
one, right?
as needs be,
Yeah.
with the legislature, and we in fact do monitor legislation.
Mm-hmm.
We have a full-time staff member in Sacramento who both does administrative tasks for us, but also then monitors and contacts the legislators. And so at that point, that was very important because we were seeing $1 billion being taken out of UC's budget, and we were trying to push back against that. And so that became a really important part of what RFA did at that time. And we participated in the protests, in petitions, and also spreading information. We're able to send information and in a way that happens very quickly.
And now, do we have to join formally, like, even if we're not an officer, all faculty can join the association just as if it were a society? Or?
Oh, yes, exactly. Yeah, so they're dues.
Mm-hmm.
They're not very onerous. I think I pay $27 a month for both AAUP and RFA membership.
So in some sense, it works a little bit like a union, even though it's not a union.
Right,
Because
correct.
you're getting some value for being a member.
Absolutely, right. Things like the off-scale salary policy, the budget in general, retirement compensation. I mean, these are the sorts of issues that we follow very closely, and any kind of legislation or proposals from UCOP. And so we're really only notified about particularly important issues. Again, because the Senate is working. We have confidence in the Senate. But there are occasionally issues that really we feel, deserve some intervention or particular notice. And those are the ones that we try to pay more attention to. Our members come from all the colleges.
All ranks of all the professors?
All ranks, yeah. So, we have a pretty interesting body of expertise to draw on, for sure. I should just mention, right now, both CUCFA and RFA are part of a larger coalition called the Reclaim California Higher Education Coalition. So this is a proposal to refund higher education in California from community colleges to UC.
So getting the state to provide more funding.
Right, and specifically through taxation. It is targeted towards raising taxes.
So it's new money.
It's new money, exactly. Because as we've really, I would say over the last 10 years, we've really learned that the budget is very, very limited in the ways in which it can expand.
Yes.
And unless there's the political will to devote that to higher education, it goes elsewhere. So this proposal establishes an increment for taxation, and it's called the $66 fix. So the median tax-paying family would pay $66 per year more in income taxes.
Doesn't sound too onerous.
Well, that's our hope.
Yeah.
That it sounds, well, that sounds pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Now, it goes up quite, not dramatically, but it does go up with income. So it's a progressive tax.
What's that median income figure that it's based on? Is it
36 to 40,000.
okay?
Yeah.
So by the time you get up to, let's say, 150K,
Right.
it could be a bit more.
It's considerably more.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It is a progressive tax, but so the 99th percentile family would pay almost $1,000.
Oh, that's not as much as I thought it might have been for the 99th percentile.
Right. And so at any rate, we have this brochure, which is online. And Reclaim it's a huge coalition at this point. It includes all 3 parts of the master plan, all 3 tiers, community college, Cal State, and UC. Also unions, including teachers' unions. Of course, the lecturers are part of I think it's AFT. K through 12 education is also concerned because, of course, this is part of their mission as well. We need a highly educated populace, and this is really what's been destroyed. Not destroyed, but eroded, I would say. Destroyed is too strong a word, but eroded in this last 18 years and certainly the last 10 years. So that's the big issue that we're working on.
Wondering if that brochure or some other information on one of those websites would say how $66 for median income and whatever else for the others.
Right.
What does that buy? How does that restore higher ed?
It buys free tuition.
I see. Okay.
So, yeah, that's the primary goal, is to eliminate tuition. And, it's not well known, but when the master plan for higher education was established in 1960, that was the premise, that there would be no tuition for higher education in all 3 tiers.
That's how it worked for quite a while, right?
Yes,
And which is still the case actually in most of the world. Like, I paid no tuition in Turkey.
Right,
But I think in California that was very unusual for the United States.
I
that
can
you
imagine,
could
yeah.
Right.
Go to UC for nothing.
Yes. And it was visionary. It was a part of making California, an attractive state, but also feeding the economy, that there were all these highly educated people coming out of this massive state educational system. I mean, not only are we the biggest state in population, but we have the biggest state education system.
And I think it might be making California stand out today because of that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But is there an underside to that idea in the sense that if the education doesn't cost anything, lots more students, and what are we going to do on our campuses with respect to schedules and classrooms and facilities?
Right.
Where's the money going to come from to shore all that up?
Right. So what it doesn't change really would be capacity. In other words, by eliminating tuition, then we admit the people who are qualified.
So that part would have to change, right? Because now it's
Right.
like if you're in the top 10% of your class, you're qualified.
I mean, that's an internal policy that we can set. We're not asking that every single student who's finished high school would go to UC. Plus, we have to have standards. I mean, that's the top 10%. I think it was 12% at one point. That's one standard, but then, of course, there are other standards, and that's what the admissions policy is for. I really don't believe that it would actually change that aspect, that we would suddenly find this kind of flood of students. I think that we would have students who would be debt-free, potentially, and students who would find it easier to come here than to making compromises. And
Now, isn't it true that over 50% of the students at UCR actually don't pay because they have grants and scholarships, like Pell Grants and things of this nature?
Right. Yes. That 50% sounds correct. I would say I don't know that number exactly, but yes, there is a very, very good financial aid system, but it doesn't cover everyone, and it also doesn't cover, of course, living costs. And I think that that's something that we sometimes forget. This is a very high cost state.
That's true.
So that's another way in which the $66 fix could, in fact, then free up other monies that could be used for stipends and things like that.
So these grants only cover the tuition?
Right.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The Pell Grants
Yeah.
and such?
Right.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yes.
Just the tuition. Oh,
That's
okay.
just for tuition.
That makes perfect
So
sense.
yes, we can say tuition free, but that doesn't cover all the costs of admission.
Okay.
So admission can still be really costly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, living in Riverside is good, but at the same time, if you think of it, it's still expensive.
Right. right. And of course, it's nothing compared to UCLA,
Yeah.
but
That's true.
but still, right? There are
Yeah.
there are substantial costs.
You still want students to apply for the grants and scholarships that might be available.
Oh, for sure, right.
Because we don't want to displace that money with this money, but we want this to be extra money.
Right, exactly.
These expenses. Now, some of the arguments, because this, of course, came up in the last election with Bernie Sanders'
Right,
platform, right? Tuition-free college education. And some of the arguments I remember from the opposite side of it is that if students don't pay for their education, they may not value it. And there's what's at stake. Maybe they don't try as hard as they would be if they felt like they were investing in it. Has the association thought about that? And
Yeah, I would say that this proposal believes that this is a kind of myth that is born out of a mindset that sees everything as having a dollar value. And the refutation for that would be the 50% of students who are getting the Pell Grants, and they're still coming here. And I would say that the value really, is way higher than just the cost.
It's a mindset, right? Because these students know that even if it's free or they pay it, this is for their future. It's just because you get it free, you still have to have a high GPA.
So you've already been working to take
Exactly.
advantage of this opportunity.
Exactly.
And now why would you stop?
Right.
Could be the argument.
Right.
Yeah.
And we don't ask for tuition for K through 12 education. That is free, and I think that it really should be. The coalition is basically talking to the legislature because this is where this needs to happen. I believe that they've also reached out to the gubernatorial candidates and to anyone who's running for office this year. This is a good moment to put this before them, and we've had good response. But it's going to be a long process. This is where the lobbying efforts and the larger advocacy efforts really come in.
Do you know what positions are of the two governor candidates that we're going to be voting on in a week or so?
Right.
What those positions are?
I don't think either of them has taken a
Okay.
specific stance on this proposal. I think Gavin Newsom has come out in general support for a tuition-free education model. I don't know what John Cox has said.
So I'm curious about what other issues that RFA is interested in.
Things have been a little bit quiet right now. There's an issue around academic freedom regarding the librarians. The Librarians Union is asking to have their academic freedom recognized, and for various reasons UC is resisting this, and so we've become involved in that. I would say one of the issues that's just arisen, and really literally in the last few days, is online education, and this will be something that we'll be discussing in committee as well. The sort of call for online education, and AAUP has many resources that help us understand the impact of online education on delivery of instruction, on things like tenured positions versus lecturer positions. So that I think is going to become a hot issue this year. Yeah. And then the budget. We've been continuously worried the impacts of this new budget model, especially as it regards kind of pitting unit against unit and the allocation of resources. So
the online education is kind of connected to the budget and even your proposal 66 fix, because I think a lot of the push to go in that direction is to try and make money from these programs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of it, I think, in fairness, might also be to increase four-year graduation rates. Because you can have more access. We're limited in classroom space, and students can't get courses that they need in time. And so maybe some of it is that too. But I think certainly the professional master's programs that cost so much are trying to perhaps replace some of the money that's been cut from the budget.
For sure, absolutely, yes. And we see that the deans are under enormous pressure because they do have both. The good news is they have some budgetary autonomy. The bad news is that they have to, make do with what they have. Yeah. We see this kind of pressure for these paying masters, kind of profitable masters, and I would say that that's of great concern to us. Yeah. That's a direction that I think we need to talk.
So, how would a faculty member who's interested in RFA, how would they get involved? And how much time do you think it would take for them to be a contributing member? And
Yeah, well, again, that really varies. I would say at the moment it would be pretty low, low investment in time.
Right.
We're always kind of poised for the next crisis, so we'll see. But to be involved is pretty easy. To go to the website, which is ucrfa.org, and there's a membership form. I hope that we'll have a meeting this fall. That's, we're always kind of busy, but yeah.
There's a lot of associations on the campus, right? There's staff association, there's
Women's
retired.
The
emeritus.
Emeriti are very active.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there shouldn't be a summit of all these associations once a year to share ideas and progress, setbacks that they've had on different things.
Wow, that would be quite
a
gathering. Well, I think so. I like that idea, but I think that there are differences in interest. The Emeriti, of course, are very, very similar too.
They're trying to stay connected.
Yeah,
and create pathways to stay connected.
Right.
I think you just informed us a great deal and gave us a lot of information about RFA.
Yeah,
great.
Definitely.
Well, it was my pleasure.
I look forward to your insights and what you can share and help us, Senate Committee on Faculty Welfare, what we can do to be strong and robust and help maybe some of the things that you're doing and vice versa.
Absolutely. Yes. I look forward to that too.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming today.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.